So in this video, let us look at how to find the domain and range of a function if the graph of the function is given. So if the graph of function is given, so how to find the domain and range? That's the question we're going to deal with. So let us take this graph. So it's given that it is a function. Now the question is on what domain and range it is a function. Now you're not asked about the codomain, you're asked to find the exact range, that is the values of y for which there is a preimage. Now the concept that we apply here is the domain of the function are all those values of x for which one or more for which an image exists. Domain is all the values of x for which an image exists. So we know that the values on domain are on x-axis, the values of the codomain are on y-axis, the values of y are on y-axis. Now as you can see from this graph, for every value of x on the negative side of the graph, there is no value of y. That means for all the negative values of x, there is no y. That means all these negative values of x do not come in the domain of the function. And if you see this graph, for all the positive values of x, you're getting an image either positive or negative. And corresponding to x is equal to 0, the curve is asymptotically meeting this line x is equal to 0. That means corresponding to x is equal to 0, the value of y is infinity. So that doesn't come in the domain. I want a finite y correspond to that x. So the domain of this function is the set of all the values of x for which some or the other y exists. So the domain of this function will be open 0 to infinity. Because this graph is moved indefinitely, for every value of x, you'll have an image. So the domain is 0 to infinity. Now what is the range? Range is all those values of y for which an x exists. So you have to start with the elements on y-axis, you have to go horizontally. So if the line cuts the curve, then it is okay. This point is in the range. That means correspond to this x, you have a y. So if you want to find the range, you have to find the values on y-axis correspond to which an x exists. So as you can see, correspond to every value of y, one or other x exists, and the range of this particular graph or function is minus infinity to plus infinity. In other words, the shadow of the curve on x-axis is the domain, the shadow of the curve on y-axis is the range. Shadow on x-axis is the domain, shadow on y-axis is the range. So if you take this curve, so this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, this is the origin. Now I say that this is how the graph looks like. So let this point be a1, let this point be a2, values of x, and let this value of y be a3, and let this be a4. Now what is the domain of this function? So the domain is the values of x for which you can get a value of y. So correspond to this x, you get a y here, correspond to this x, you get a y here. So corresponding to every x, you're getting a y, except this a1. Corresponding to this a1, the curve, as you can see, is asymptotically touching x is equal to a1. Similarly, the curve is asymptotically touching x is equal to a2. That means corresponding to a1 and a2, the value of y is infinity. Hence, these 2 points does not come in the domain. So the domain is all real numbers except a1, a2. So except at these 2 points, wherever you draw a vertical line corresponding to an x, you get a value of y. Now what is the range of this? To find the range, you have to start from y-axis and go horizontally. So as you can see, if you start from minus infinity, you're getting some values of x correspond to all these y's. And the boundary value is a3. Correspond to a3, you're getting a value of y. If you go above a3, you're not getting any value of x. And it continues from a3 to a4. Between a3 and a4, you're not getting any value of x. Exactly at a4 also, because these two curves are asymptotic, you won't get an x. If you go above a4, again you start getting an x. So between a3 and a4, you're not getting values of x correspond to this value. That means these points cannot be images. So hence the range is minus infinity to a3, minus infinity to a3, union. And after a4, open a4 to infinity. So this is the domain, this is the range. So I hope you have understood how to find the domain and range from the graphs. So this is a very important skill which you need to master. So make sure that understand these very nicely. Thank you.